Hey everybody, welcome back to Relevant Tech. Today I'm going to walk you through deploying to a server with GitHub. So firstly, we'll create a deployment folder on the server. Secondly, we will create a fresh repo to push to the server that will redirect its pulls into the deployment folder by the use of a simple post-receive hook or script. Thirdly, we will create a new fresh GitHub repo and just a super simple Hello World website, just one file. Fourthly, we will create a remote connection in our local GitHub folder. And finally, we'll push to the server. So that'll all make a whole heck of a lot more sense as you watch. So let's just get started. Firstly, we're going to create a test deployment folder. You can call this whatever you'd like to. It certainly doesn't have to be called test deployment. Just for the sake of the video, I'm just going to call it test deployment folder. I'm going to create this in the root of my public HTML folder on my server, but if there's a spot that makes more sense for you, feel free to save it there. Next, we're going to change directories back into the root of the home folder on the server, where I actually have a folder called Git repos, where I store my different production repos. And this is where we're actually going to initialize our Git repo that will redirect its pulls or pushes into the deployment folder that we just created a minute ago. You can name this whatever you'd like. Again, I'm naming mine test deployment, and actually oftentimes I will include the .git extension on the end of the folder name. I actually just forgot to do it in this case. It will not matter one way or the other, but it is kind of convention to add the .git at the end, so it should say test deployment.git, if that makes sense. We're going to jump into the hooks folder, which was created in the git init command, and we will add a post-receive script to this folder. It's imperative that we do enact the chmod plus x command upon this post-receive script and make sure that it's executable. Now we're going to use Vim to edit the script. You may or may not have Vim already installed on your server. Most likely you do if it's a Linux server, but there are other options out there such as Nano or VI, or you could create the script and upload it into this folder if you would like, and just make sure that if you do that, that you remember to use the chmod plus x on that folder or that file that you uploaded. You'll find a link in the description as well as the script that I used. This is a ready-made script on the GitHub website that you can paste in here, and we just have to change a couple things, the target directory and the Git directory. So the target directory is going to be the deployment folder that we created a couple minutes ago. And I like to actually change directories into that folder and use the pwd print working directory and just copy and paste that so I know that I didn't mistype anything. And the GitHub string variable is going to be filled with the directory of the GitHub folder that we created. So just really quickly, we will create a GitHub repo that we'll use for this project. And we're going to create a local folder on our local machine that links to that repo by clicking the Setup in Desktop button. Just make sure to choose a path that you like. I have all my repos stored in the same folder on my local machine. And we'll just create an index.html here to be able to prove that our deploy command has worked in a few minutes. Check it out and just make sure everything's working fine on the local host. All looks good to me. And let's just push that to the GitHub repo. Finally, we're going to do a little bit of setup on our local folder that we just created with this GitHub repo in it. So you just want to open up the terminal and change directories into the folder that you just created when you clicked on that Open in Desktop button on github.com and created that local directory. So lastly, we just have to add the remote connection by the git remote add command. You can call yours whatever you'd like. You certainly don't have to use the word production after the add command. So you could say git remote add origin, or whatever you'd like. But since this is used basically for me oftentimes with production server, I do just call mine production. And then you're going to add the SSH line that will get you into your server. Obviously, all those X's are just meant to replace what my actual server IP is. To get into my server, I do have to use port 2222. So I've seen a lot of examples where there's no port specified after the colon, and that's just fine. You could just have a colon with the path to the GitHub repo that we created on the server. Just to make sure, you do not want to direct this to the path of your deployment folder. You want to actually direct it to the path of the GitHub repo that we added, not the public HTML folder that we're deploying to. So we'll just navigate to that, copy and paste it in here, and you'll see this is the whole string that we need. And I will just really quickly change those X's to my server IP. And we'll hit enter, and it should have added that remote connection. Okay, now's as good of a time as any to navigate to that server folder just on your browser and just make sure it is showing an empty folder, and looks like we're good to go here. Okay, and then we can go back into the local GitHub repo, and we're going to use the git push command. I'm using git push production because I named my remote connection production, but if you named your remote connection something else, make sure not to type git push production, but type in git push whatever you named it. And it's also a good time to mention, you could have a number of different remote connections all named different things, and you could push to those different remote connections using this same command, obviously with just a different name at the end of it. Enter in your SSH password, and it should deploy to that folder. Now I can go back to the browser and just check it out, and looks like we're good to go.